Good morning. Letting everybody know we're here. I'm getting ready to get started. Okay, that's done. Thanks for being here. Um, so I wanted to talk today about this guy. This guy's name's Ken Wheeler, and he runs um, a YouTube channel that I find entertaining. And his personality is hilarious, by the way. I don't know him personally, and I really enjoy his personality because the language and words he uses, it kind of reminds me of me like times 20. The stuff, anyway. He's a real he's a genuine human, and I love him for that. His YouTube channel is called Theoria Apophysis, and I'm actually going to be putting a link here because I want you guys to consider this on your own. Yes, it is a new shirt, Ken. It's not new, but it's new to you guys. Here is his channel, putting it in the link there. I don't want to play it on here only because the wrestling thing that I played yesterday, holy shit, that got flagged across the globe. It's like, no, how dare you play professional wrestling? They were pretty adamant about that. So I don't want the same thing to happen. So I'm not going to actually play Ken's video right now. But I encourage you to watch it, and it's actually not necessary to watch it. Ken goes into a lot of magnetism stuff, and he is laying out a really interesting diagram. Now, first of all, let me say, I believe that Ken is what you would call a globe earther. In fact, I don't believe it. His cosmology is globe Earth. There's nothing wrong with that. Um, it's in the past I've actually used that. If you remember my talk with Thomas Sheridan and the wanker cosmology comments and how tired I am of that, it's I've been guilty of this too. I've applied to others that, well, if this person still thinks we went to the moon, I can't really listen to him. To clarify, I don't know if Ken personally thinks we went to the moon, by the way. So I'm not trying to clarify him as such, but he does believe in a globe model. And because of that, in the past, this is a confession, because of that, in the past, I have been more quick to be like, well, man, do I even want to burn the calories on this guy? I still do. I still do that with different people, and Ken is one of those people. I'm not a regular watcher of him. I'm sure some of you guys will be correcting me about what he has said, and I encourage everyone else in the chat to prune my lips and listen to what others are saying when it comes to Ken, because if they're correcting me, it's very possible that's the case. But to put it plainly, Ken sees a curve. He believes in the curve. He accepts the curve, and I've had a new perspective on this whole curve versus flat thing, and it has to do with aperture. If you've been listening to these lectures, but whatever you want to call these things, you've heard me go into aperture a little bit, and I wanted to go into that a little bit more today and explain why Ken is literally describing a flat Earth, but from a globe, ball Earth perspective, and it's beautiful. It's so gorgeous. And I will again say, in fact, in the comments, I was one of the first who happened to see his movie this morning, and I went in and posted saying that same thing, and he does not, he's not down with that. He's like, no, I never once insinuated it's flat. And that's cool, because this really does come down aperture. But since I don't want to violate the the rules, and I want him to get credit for his own video, I'm just going to real quick, real quick, draw you what he sees. Ken is seeing. He's describing magnetics as a toroidal field, right? Like a donut shaped toroidal field, which I am drawing. I know you can't see me drawing right now, but he's drawing a toroidal field, a torus, okay? And then on top of that torus, he's drawing converging lines. And I love his language. He's like, the simplex convergence of the dielectric dilithium crystal is clear that it's just like, yeah, whatever. I get it. But the point is that Ken's main point is that all life is bred and controlled and simulates inside this center 0 point. And he actually has an interesting, his drawing's much better, by the way. He's got, it's all convergence. And basically the center point is the equilibrium between the charges, between the polarities, between the polarities. He's charging that system, and basically all life is pushed to the center of the donut, as it were. And as I'm watching this, it's profound, because what he's doing is he's drawing the dome. He's drawing an electromagnetic dome over the Earth as he's telling you about globe Earth, as he's telling you about ball Earth. And I found that just fascinating, because I know that Ken will still believe in the globe Earth. And I use belief in a beautiful way. Keep in mind, I think belief is a beautiful thing. I'm not implying that. I think that knowing is the enemy of belief. I think that when we know things, what we really are is in a trance where we've locked in the world in a certain way to save us calories, and it's going to be a lot harder for us to open that and consider new evidence. So what I'm getting at is this: he from the globe Earth, he's still seeing a convergent line in which basically there's a dome required, a physical dome, magnetic dome is required inside of his worldview. Now, it's not a dome like in the traditional. You can't even really call flat Earth traditional. I realize the cosmology is like 70,000 years old, but it's like a new old idea, right? But he's not just describing a dome. He's actually describing a bundt cake with a magnetic top. It's sort of like this, if you think about it. Because this is the toroidal field. These humps right here are the toroidal field he's describing, and then on top he's got a convergence. The higher you go away from it, the more you stay in. The more you're forced down. Again, I think this is fascinating because it fits both, and I wanted to actually hit on why and how in the world can something fit both. How is that even possible? And the word I've been using to help explain this, and the irony is that Ken is actually a camera guy. The irony here is that I've been using this word aperture for a while, and Ken is actually a camera guy. But I've been using the word aperture to explain what I mean. Our aperture, right, is only big enough to accept that government would or would not lie to us. I have friends that were wearing masks now. They believe in the COVID virus, and it's because their aperture is not able to fit in the idea that government would lie to them. It's a very small hole. The next one up from that would be, say, Building 7, and then the next one up from that would be Building 7 was done to help you. There's all these different levels that are waiting for your aperture, and all of them are true. Every one of them are true. And that's really the most profound thing about this universe that I'm now telling you. Remember how I've warned you about the quickening? How inside of sociopathy, inside of psychology, inside of religion, inside of politics, we're obsessed with this Wetiko idea that there can be only one, that there can be only one right way, that there can be only one fact, that the only way to plant a tree is to stake it, right? Is to physically stake it to the ground. And because you did that once and you got pears, every tree needs to be staked in a proper way. This is the quickening of thought. And most globe earthers, a lot of flat earthers have it too. In fact, most people have this. They're playing the quickening with thought. They believe that truth and ideas should always be consistently the same, and that there should be no convergence at all. In fact, if there is, someone is either lying, mistaken, or as some people like to say, oh, he's a shill. A quick aside here, the people that are saying that the flat earth is a CIA prop, it's literally the stupidest thing I've ever heard. If you're implying that the CIA was around in Tibet, like 15,000 years ago, let's just take a moment for those people. Okay, but it all comes down to aperture. It all comes down to what are you willing to accept what is the essence of the universe that you can take in, and with that, what information can you extract and glean from it? And this is all because of compassion. What I mean by that is that with my new compassion, aside, I'm not saying I'm more compassionate than anyone, I'm just less uncompassionate than I was a week ago. With this newfound compassion I have, I can watch Ken and I can see through his cosmology and still find gold in what he has to say. And that's what his video does. It's showing me some gold that he didn't even know was there because his aperture isn't ready. But that's fine. That's fine. I still would like for us to study how that works. How in the world is that even possible? And so I put together a few little things here. This is a chart of focal length / angle of view. And it's basically showing you, I need to get this where I can pause it. Sorry guys, sorry, I should have done this before. I thought it was. Height when slide transit slide automatic manual. Use hotkeys. Sorry about that. I should have had this ready. And I gotta go down here and turn on the hotkeys. La. Sorry about that. I'm an amateur, but that's okay, cause I'm doing it quick, yeah. And you're getting a free song out of it. Yeah. Okay. Now, is that right? No, it still doesn't work. Sometimes that does not work. Wait. Yeah, so there we go. Okay. So you got focal length, angle of view, right? So at the top in super telephoto mode, you're pretty much seeing the world one-to-one. What I mean by that is that straight lines are straight, and you have a very, very thin depth of field, right? Super telephoto, you're only going to see just a little bit, 600 millimeters in this chart. The chart numbers don't really matter, but as you go down through your lenses, you're seeing that super telephoto, telephoto, medium telephoto, then normal. Look how normal is actually pretty curved, meaning that as you go to the left and the right side of your frame, you're going to get some bending of light. And then as you keep going, you'll get wide angle. It's even worse. And then you've got extra wide angle. And if you look down the very bottom, you see fisheye. You see a fisheye that's literally showing you half of the world. But everything's distorted, right? Everything's distorted. All of these are true, aren't they? Super telephoto, telephoto, medium telephoto, normal, wide angle, extra. These are all normal. Meaning that they're not, it's not like they're making up data, right, to show you. It's not like they're creating a world, drawing it, and then making shit wrong, and then coming back and trying to lie to you in some secret CIA program to tell you the fisheye lens is real or whatever. It's not that. All these people, whichever lens you have on, whichever focal length you have chosen, is going to show you the world based on that length. And that's what Ken is. Ken has a super telephoto. Or a medium telephoto. Again, this is not, guys, there's not a right answer, okay? Just like a photographer would pull off a great shot with fisheye versus a great shot with super telephoto. These are just spectrums of viewing the world through your camera lens. That's all. So as an example, two different lenses. Here you see on the left, you see a straight, more closer to a telephoto shot, right? All your lines are crisp. They're straight. And then on the right, you've got your fisheye. I realize this is all basic, guys, but I'm getting ready to build on this. I just had to start here. So your fisheye is showing you more of the world. However, that world is distorted compared to what it was before. We're not really into aperture yet. We're actually just into focal length. Now, when you've got aperture, what you're really doing is you're defining how much of the depth of field is going to be in focus. All right, you can see on the left that a small aperture has a larger area that is in focus, while a wider aperture has a smaller area that's in focus. Basically, as you shutter down, as you close your aperture, I should say, you're also closing your window of what will be in focus. They call this bokeh or bokeh or whatever. It's the idea that part of your scenery is going to be blurred out. It's going to make your actor pop because the rest of the scene is blurred out behind him. Now I want you to combine aperture and focal length, and I want you to apply that to your third eye. All right, I want you to apply that. I want you to apply that to your all-seeing equipment. I'm clarifying that because you are seeing the world through multiple senses, whether you know it or not. All of this is being jacked back into your eyes, and it's being used to visualize the world. You don't actually see the world, you actually visualize the world. And that is an intense spoon of gravy to take in. What you see is not necessarily what we get. It's profound because we've been taught from day one that what you see is what you get. In fact, as a zeteticist, I have told you over and over again that all that is true, the only thing that is true, is what you can directly perceive or experience. But I'm not saying what you can directly see, because what's really happening is the pineal gland is seeing the world. It's using the perturbations, the vibrations from everything outside you to determine and build the world. It's using your two eyes as rod and cone towers, collectors, antennas that are collecting rods and cones are filling with data that's coming in, right? Not only is it light, but it's also information. Light is a particle and a wave. It's DC and AC. It's an asynchronous data. It's in a polarity of good and evil. It's in a polarity of dark and light. And that polarity has with it an underlying signal. It's no different than listening to someone on a walkie-talkie speak German when you speak English. When that's happening, you're hearing the German. You can record the German. You can write down all the syllables. You could record it with a tape recorder. But you don't actually know what the person's saying. However, if he started to speak English, not only would you still be getting the radio signal in, but you'd actually be interpreting information as well. We have this aperture of information. It's accepting truth based on what it is we're comfortable to perceive. What it is, and when I use comfortable, it's more about what lens we've chosen to perceive the world through. You can change your lens whenever you want. Some of you might listen to a podcast by me and change your lens. Some of you might do that with Ken and change your lens. Some of you might be walking in nature and decide, this lens is faulty. I need to put on a different lens. And you see the world through a whole new perspective. That's what's happening now. We are learning to unstake the pear tree. We are learning that pear trees can grow without a stake. What they need is love and attention and belief. It's a different kind of farming. It's a different kind of site farming. We are farming for photons using a percolation method instead of putting them inside a grow room in our closet so the cops can't find us. It's a totally different system of how you're finding truth. In fact, it's a system that's so different that you are now at the point where you understand the value of planting in the field, planting in a greenhouse, planting in a pot. Same as you know that inside your camera bag, you've got a fisheye lens, you have a telephoto lens, you have a 50-50. You have these lenses, and none of them is correct. None of them is right. In fact, if you're a good photographer, you're going to use the right lens to capture the scene in the most effective way possible. What we're talking about is an aperture of consciousness. And the closest example that I can show you of that is going to come up right here. What I've done here, this is a collection of, this is a dolly zoom shot, right? Now these are different movies that use this shot. And as you're watching this, what I'm asking you to pay attention to is how much data you are gaining or losing based on how the dolly pans and zooms. So first of all, to describe this shot, what you're doing is that you're zooming the camera lens in to the scene as the camera itself is being dollied backwards. So picture that the camera is on wheels and it's backing up from the scene, but while it's backing up, someone is using the zoom to zoom in at exactly the same rate so it keeps the actor in the same point in the stage. All right? Now I think, no, it won't let me pause it. What I want you to pay attention to is how much data you're losing. All right. For example, right now you're gaining more trees. As you're coming over this bank here, you're gaining more trees right here. I mean, more houses. You didn't see those houses before, but now you see them. Same for on the street. When they're getting out of the car, you see a stop sign on the left, but only at the right aperture. The stop sign's now gone. Same with Roy Scheider. You're seeing what's behind the woman's back behind him, but then you're losing it as the aperture changes. Both are true. Both are true. In one scene, you can see a pinto or a gremlin, I can't remember which, on the left side. It's next to a stop sign. And with a different lens, you don't see that. Now, if we were living in Wetiko, if we were living in the land of there can be only one, where we have a quickening, you would then have a fist fight. You would have one person insisting there's a pinto on the left and another person insisting there's not a pinto. It would become a drag-out fight months ago because there could be only one. Because we have that quickening notion where no, it's got to be this or the other. There's no way it can be both. But as you can see, both are right. Both are holding true. This is what's so fascinating about the fabric of the universe that we're in. Both are holding true with all their data. Now, all the data that's willing to come in, I should say. I want you to picture telling a globe earther, trying to tell him that there's a pinto outside his lens and that you can clearly see it, but he can't. You're never going to win that argument. The only way that's ever going to happen is if that person changes their lens itself, changes their dolly and their zoom to such a way where they now see the same pinto you did. That's the truth of this world. This right here is the truth of this world. And guys, it goes even further. Because this is not just about flat Earth. This is not just about convex Earth, concave Earth, globe Earth, ball Earth. This is about demons too. This is about spirits. This is about cosmology. This is about all the synchronicities in your life that you see that a reptile would not. A reptile lacks the comprehension of synchronicity. A reptile's never going to go, oh my God, that's such a coincidence. They lack the capacity, they lack the aperture for such complex notions as synchronicity. And what you're seeing happening around us right now is people are having a new aperture installed, whether they like it or not. It's happening before their eyes, and it's making them sometimes violent, like verbally violent. It's making them very uncomfortable. It's making them, our worlds are cracking. And it's beautiful because we need to crack open and realize how this world actually works, that it's a system of aperture. It's a system of focal length, aperture, and zoom. Where we stand in the world is going to show us more or less information. And that the amount of more or less information is directly tied to our adrenal, emotional capacity to absorb truth. Are we willing to accept this, or are we willing not to accept this? All right. Now, let's talk about demon for a sec, because that probably threw some of you off. I want to remind you, if you've read any of my books, you'll know I've got a pretty big chapter in Blueprints of Mind Control. I think it's Blueprints of Mind Control on schizophrenia. Yeah, it's the technology of demons. It's like 4 chapters combined into one, I think. It goes into how the same schizophrenics will have a shared hallucination. They will see the schizophrenics who are placed in a room, and the ones that aren't on too much Thorazine or whatever they're giving them with, when they're placed into a central building, which is always on a haunted Indian burial ground. I just want to point that out. I that's verified. Not always, but most of them are. They are seeing things in the world that you and I do not have the aperture for. We are not comfortable perceiving a world where there are living, westing spirits that are wandering through our land. In fact, we don't want to see them, so we demonize them. We turn our ancestors into demons and reject them to the pit. We cast them out. This is what happens when you migrate. This is what happens when you're always having to lift your roots up and take it away. You're not connected to the land anymore. This is what happens when you don't bury your bones, when you burn them instead, an incinerator. This is what happens when we go to work every day. The man is migrating his roots. He's lifting them up out of the ground where they should be at home and taking them to this other place and trying to plant them in a cubicle for a while and then come back home. Although that's bad to him, what he's really missing is how that's a abandonment of the ancestors, our ancestral spirits that are all around us. The same thing that the Indians have always told you was there, the same thing that so many others have told you was there, are there, but our aperture is not willing to accept it. It requires an extreme wide angle. In fact, we will call the schizophrenic, dude, that guy's not, no, he's a fucking fisheye. That's what he is. He's a fisheye on the world. He has no clue. He's not normal, right? He's not normal up here in the 34 to 50, 46 degree range. That's why he's seeing other stuff, because he's broken. And that's what, it's always going to be the quickening. It's always going to be what limits you. And if you remember, constriction is always the tool used to control you. Every time, whether it be medicine, oil, war, information, spirituality, philosophy, cosmology, military power, it's all about constriction. If they can constrict something, they can control it. That literally is the blueprint of mind control. That's all it takes. And so if you are applying that to your cosmology, you can see why there's so much ridicule against flat Earth and so much ridicule from flat Earth against globe. These are two competing apertures that refuse to accept that there cannot be only one, that there could be only two or four, or there could be 3 trillion. This is why Thomas Sheridan is a wanker when it comes to ridiculing cosmology. It's part of the quickening game that we are all stuck in, that we are all playing in. It's why so many flat earthers have that feeling of just utter abandonment when they watch someone deny something as simple as a 10-mile sight test across a pond. That's rejected. The same way my nurse friend in Raleigh rejected Dr. Kaufman's video. He called it fortune telling. He called Dr. Kaufman looking at slides and drawing circles around them and saying, look, here's an exosome and here's what they're calling COVID-19. He calls that fortune telling. It's aperture, guys. It's all about aperture. He's not willing to see a world where the government would lie. He's not seeing a giant economic reset, even though he knows it's supposed to happen. He doesn't see that would happen through lying. All of this is about aperture. And your compassion for others' apertures is going to actually open your aperture even wider. And I proved it this morning when I watched Ken's video, because I saw him drawing little moons orbiting the Earth. And typically I would just kind of like, okay, this is kind of nuts. I'm able to see through that and go, no, this is what his aperture sees. What is he telling you, James? What is he telling you? And what he's telling me, despite his aperture, is that there's a magnetic dome. And what's fascinating about this is it's a magnetic dome, which means it's not made out of fucking plastic. It's not made out of glass. It's not made out of anything else. It's a purely magnetic field. Now, on that magnetic field, perhaps some sort of ice or condensation formed against it, right? Perhaps that condensation's gotten thicker and thicker over time. Perhaps that's vulcanized into a volcanic glass. I don't know. My point is that it's really fascinating when you look deeper into magnetics that you end up seeing a dome. You end up seeing a sweet spot in the middle where only life could exist. That polarity, the central part of the pole. It's good stuff, guys. Good stuff. And none of us have to be right or wrong. None of us have to we don't have to have a war where we're throwing chairs at each other, right? Inside the ring. There's a lion, the witch, and the wardrobe, right? Where there's flat earth and baller. None of that has to happen anymore because it's all aperture. It's simply a matter of who picked the best lens today. Who was able to see the best view, the best perspective, the best vista on where we're at. It's all about the lens. And that information we lose or gain is vital to each of us. It allows us to see the world in a comfortable way. That's the key. It allows you to see the world in a comfortable way. And that's why for so long I kept calling the truth movement a comfort movement. And I used to say that in a demeaning way. And I'm taking all that back. It's not demeaning at all. It's necessary. Each of us, we don't have the same equipment God does. We can't perceive all things at all time. It would hurt. It would blow us out. Our eyes would sizzle. Our ears would explode. Our nose would implode. Our cochlea, holy shit, think what that would do. It's all of this is about aperture. And that's beautiful. It's truly gorgeous. Because no one's wrong. Everyone's perceiving the world exactly as they should. They're simply using their aperture. And I don't want a world where all of us have to have the same aperture. Because if we do, it's going to mean we're going to have to get a vaccine. Or we're going to have to go to aperture school. Or we're going to have to listen to really, really stupid, boring stories about how the moon has... it's so nuts. The entire moon thing is just nuts. Even understanding that the moon has to freaking rotate in such a way to keep its same side towards you. It's aperture. See, I'm doing it right now. And what I'm doing is reacting to all the ridicule. There's a force field when you change these different lenses. It makes it difficult. But that's why we're here. We're here to burn calories. We're here to get that done. Anthony Patron, thank you for the super chat. New here, but really enjoying your channel. Thank you for helping me not waste my prana. Hey, thank you for not wasting your prana. We need that stuff. We need that. And the fact that you're willing to give this to me right now means a lot to me. I'm trying to harvest that in the best way I possibly can. And use that to help all of us. All of our apertures grow, including mine. Absolutely, including mine. Slow on the bird feeder today, by the way. So, watch Ken. Check it out and see what you think. I am really tempted to end the show right now. And I say that because I've had two people say the show's too long. And if we were back in Babylon where everyone had a job, I would agree with that. And I would be like, yeah, you're right. People have to get back to work. But we're not really there. We're in a place now where we can use some time to uncarve, to unpeel. I'm debating that, though. If you guys think the show's too long, let me know. What I do is I watch the audience. And as soon as the audience drifts off, I realize, hey, James, you're losing. You need to stop. That's usually how I do it. I mean, I stop when I'm done talking, but if I'm not. Anyway, maybe I shouldn't even be talking about that. But I just want you guys to know that I'm kind of paranoid that maybe I'm talking too long. And I don't think I am because I'm watching the chart. But it might be something that I try in the future. In fact, it would be a good time to end it now because this would be just about the aperture of flat Earth. But I really, really wanted to get into Rosicrucians. I really wanted to also talk about Project Bluebeam and what's coming. And the 5-hour stream. So, Project Bluebeam is coming. And if you don't know what Project Bluebeam is, it's basically a staged alien invasion. And I used to be really upset by this. I used to be like, how dare they? How dare they? But only now, after I'm seeing the world through this different kind of way, am I realizing that that this might be a good thing. It feels like the deeper you push someone into believing a psyop, the better chance they have of breaking out of it when it blows up in their face. And right now, that's happening with the Air Force. Yesterday, the Air Force released... They didn't even release it. It's the same video that's been out. It's the U.S. Navy. Yeah, I'll show it to you. The U.S. Navy, I already had this video out a while ago. And they decided, no, we need to release this right now. COVID's dying down, and we need to release this right now, so we can keep the narrative moving. And so they've released this. Now, what I want to point out about this video is that nobody questions. When I say nobody, you guys know what I mean. I mean most people swallow this as legit. They're like, it has to be true. It has to. Why else would they say that? It has to be true. It has to be. There's never. We're still making a fatal flaw. Every day we still wake up and we insist that it's probably true, that what we hear is probably true. And as I mentioned, that's a result of your schooling. You've been taught for 12 years straight to accept what you've been told, to regurgitate it. You've been taught that from the very beginning. It's only when you become an adult that you can start to try and unwind that and start to see the lies. And in the past, many of you say, well, that's because everything's evil. The reason why that's the case is because the man's trying to hold you down. And there's certainly some men that are profiting from holding you down. But the universe itself is not trying to hold you down. The universe is your dojo. And these things are trying to teach you something. They are trying to get you to use discernment, and we're going to keep on believing things until we don't. Until we remove our truth filter. It's like a polarizer filter that's always on. We've been born with this polarizer filter where we assume everything that comes in must be true. And if we finally take that filter off, we can start to see the world a little bit differently. But it's hard because if you're pretending that the world's out to torture you or kill you, or the man's out to try and keep you down, you're missing the beautiful lesson of the jester. Comedians use this magic all the time. It's very, very powerful. It's crucial. It's something I've been learning watching Owen. It's like an art. The art of the jester is the art of slipping in profundities mixed in with playful deceit. If you think about what sarcasm is, if you think about what a joke is, it's typically showing you the ridiculousnit's of the world inside of a truth, but also wrapped inside this other package, which allows it to penetrate through your force field and hit you with a cream pie. It's a cream pie right in the face. And because it's a cream pie, you don't feel hit by it. You don't feel devastated. You feel surprised by it. That's why a joke is a perfect electrical cream pie. It's enough to where it's able to slip through your field, but hit you in such a way where no one on your crew dies. Instead, everyone's just shocked. I'm like, I did not know that could happen. I did not know that could happen. And I think that we would all be healthier if we would stop implying or insinuating or believing that all this is to make you feel like crap, that all this is to keep you down, that all of this is here to deceive you. It's actually not. All of this is here to challenge you. All of this is here to show you how to change your aperture, how to change from one lens to another, how to adjust on the fly what it is you want to see about the world so you can learn more about it, so you can discern. And I can prove it. I can prove it. I'm waiting for this is a dramatic pause while I pull this up. The Ten Commandments. I can't believe I'm even quoting the Ten Commandments. I say that because of my own quest through cosmology and religion. I can't believe I never noticed this before. You shall have no other gods before me. That's number one. That's the quickening, by the way, right? Saying there can be only one. That's proof right there of the quickening. You shall have no other gods before me. That's proof right there. Number two, you shall not make idols. I think that counts as relics too. We've seemed to have forgotten that one. We treat the Bible as a relic when actually the Bible is teaching you something even more profound. It's teaching you about discernment. You're about to see this in a second. Number three, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Okay. It's kind of weird that the most powerful being in the world we cannot call names at, but everyone else we can, but okay. Number four, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. That's cool. Nope, that sounds good to me. It's, Sunday, Pagan's Day, works for me. Honor your father and your mother. Of course, that sounds great. I love that one. You should not commit murder. I'm all for that. Why murder? That's your crows. There's no reason to do that. You should not commit adultery. I'm all for that. No one do that. You shall not steal. Of course not. Let's not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. That's pretty specific, isn't it? It's saying, hey, whatever you do, don't make up a story about your neighbor and tell it to someone else. It's very specific. It involves a neighbor. It involves a witness. It's very specific. Number 10, you shall not covet. There's one missing. Thou shalt not lie. Thou shalt not lie is not a commandment. And I can hear it right now. No, James, it is. It's bearing false witness against your neighbor is the same as lying. And no, it's not. No, it's not. You can lie to yourself. You can lie to your kids. You can lie to anyone without witnessing against your neighbor. Ladies and gentlemen, lying is not a sin. It doesn't mean it's not wrong, by the way, but it's not a sin. And if that doesn't strike you as interesting, when you look around the world right now and you look at how many lies we have and how much trouble, how much death, how much consent it's falsely extracted, if you look at all the vaccines, if you look at the moon landings, if you look at the ridicule about cosmology, if you look at every single piece of bullshit propaganda that we've ever been fed, every one of those is a lie, and it's not listed as a commandment. Now, if you reject all gods, if you reject any kind of commandments at all, if you think all that's bunk, there's no reason to even go on. But if you're like me and you find this fascinating, I would like for us to pretend that it was not a mistake, that it was not, as Mel Brooks so funnily did, he a scene, History of the World, I think, where Moses comes down with 20 commandments and he drops one plate and he says 10 commandments. If you don't believe that happened, and you believe that this is an infallible God, it's a beautiful opportunity to ask yourself, does God want us in a world of lies? Does he? And if you think about the actual dimension of truth, the dimension of truth itself can only come with lies. You cannot know truth if it were not for lies. You cannot do that. You can't. You need lies to understand what truth is. And so I say to you, what if lies are an important part of this place? What if lies are what if God knew that lies were the only way that our aperture could comfortably open? What if that was the only way that we could resolve the world and still see things through different lenses? As if it was okay to lie. And when I say okay, I mean as if it was understandable that we would end up using words like lies, that we would end up having this concept. And now let's take it further. What if What if lies themselves are not real, but our lack of understanding of aperture is? Meaning, as we grow, as we learn to change our aperture in real time, and that's what true compassion is, right? I would say that if you were to describe what does Jesus do? First of all, he's a necromancer, which means he knows how to expunge demons from you. He knows how, if I need to talk more about demons, I will. But he's able to see electrical, energetic fields, living tracers, right, of trauma and pain that are seen as shadows by certain people that have the correct aperture to see through that. That what if lies and truth themselves is the same kind of polarity that we just simply don't understand yet. And that what Jesus does is he's able to adjust his aperture to whoever he's in the room with. And maybe by adjusting your aperture, what you're really doing is creating an empathic, deep, deep, deep connection to somebody. You know how when you meet someone and you're like, that guy gets it, man, that guy fucking gets it. Like that's Jesus times a million. And why? Because he's adjusting his aperture real time to fit in to an understanding with you. He's picking an IP on a local Wi-Fi network between you and him. Both of you are. And now you're sharing files. You're sharing, you no longer have security against each other. You're on an open network now. And it's that open network that allows the body to heal. Why? Because you're pacing. You're pacing each other. And if you're pacing someone that has no guilt, no trauma, no shame, you're actually learning how all of your blood cells have someone to look up to. They have someone to ground themselves around. It's like if you were to hang out with your hero for 4 or 5 days. If you're healthy enough and you hang out with your hero for 4 or 5 days, he will make you taller. He will make you more stable. On a personal level, for me personally, it's the difference between if I was hanging out with Richie from Boston versus Owen Benjamin. What I mean by that is that Owen is a very grounding. He's a fucking giant, so giants are going to be grounded. It's kind of hard for them not to be. I have a different field state when I'm talking to one versus the other. My aperture changes in real time as a result of who I'm talking to. All of us do that. If you've ever been called an empath, what they're really doing is saying, oh, that guy knows how to change lenses. He knows how to be in a crowd of people and change his lens to best fit the scenario. And when you don't have that with Tico, when you don't have that, I'm quickening, everything has to be, I have to have the right answer, I'm going to die. You can now see things that you could not see before. You see houses that weren't there. You see cars that weren't there. You see beach sand that wasn't there. Which shows you just how crucial the neurons of humanity are to you. It shows you just how important that is. To have this vulnerable, permeable membrane that we can use to raise or lower each other, to lift each other up or push people down. And that's why that's why I think these guys are doing this ritual. That's why they put 2 ships on the West Coast and the East Coast. Because they were symbolizing the 2 towers because they knew it would scare the piss out of me. Not just me. I'm not saying they did it for me. But they knew it would scare the piss out of people that were paying attention. They knew that anyone who had this aperture of the extreme wide angle would see these ships pulling up and go, holy fuck, those are the 2 towers. And they knew at that moment that would attract the attention of both Richie from Boston and Owen. It would bring both of those things together. And it would cause an aperture to open that was not open before, a small one. A 280 concurrent viewer aperture has now opened as a direct result of those ships of COVID-19 has brought me to now stream every day. It has brought 282 of you to listen right now, to consider this aperture yourself. And this is what I'm saying when I say that, why are these guys giving away so much power? Why are they willing to throw away all their influence over you? Why are they giving you Building 7 and purposely made it fall last? And purposely filmed it afterwards, had them say it fell, it didn't, and then release that footage? It's because they want you to learn how to change your aperture. All right? So first of all, don't worry. If you still want to, if you want to obsess over the evil people, it's cool. Go for it. I encourage you to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. There are some evil people out there. There are. Some people have been bent by trauma over time in a logistical way that's been used to create a dissonance in the earth. But if you look at the overall plan, that same dissonance is actually causing the same people to change their aperture. Because people see that and they go, that's fucked up. I would like to change my aperture about this to understand the world better, because I'm running out of labels for evil. I've called Trump evil, I've called this evil, I've called this person evil, I've called this person evil, I've called these people, all these people are evil. Anyone who believes in globe earth is evil. Anyone who believes in ball earth is evil. Anyone who believes in this is evil. Anyone who believes in vaccines is evil. And you can stop all that stuff and go, man, I haven't been able to see shit. I've been putting electrical tape over all these check engine lights in the world because I didn't want to see them. And now I can't see shit. It's no different than taking this and just pretending, well, no, none of those houses are there. No, those houses weren't there. And the car wasn't there. Because that's more comfortable. Your adrenals are more comfortable with that. But think how comfortable it is to realize all you can do is just change the aperture. All you got to do is just change your aperture. That's it. Just change it. If you don't want your world to be so square, you want to see more of your world, change it to fisheye. It's going to distort things a little bit. Your math might not even fit in some places. Other places it'll fit perfectly. Some places it won't. But that's what we're here to do. And it's beautiful because we're here to learn. You are at the cusp of opening a new sense, a new sensation. And I want you to imagine, okay, so if you don't know this, your eyes first learned to perceive red. That was the first light that your eyes could perceive. The shape of the wavelength of red was such a way that your rods and cones, it's either your rods or your cones, I'm sorry, I can't remember which, but one of those was able to receive red before it could perceive blue. There are certain creatures out there. A snake is an example of this. A dog is an example of this. We call them colorblind, but they're not colorblind. They're color sensed. A dog will perceive its vision in black and white, because if it perceived color, it would have no spatial canvas to broadcast smell. The most important part of a dog is its nose, its muzzle. It hits the earth first. It hits everything first, right? Its nose. It needs its monitor, right? Its computer monitor. If you were to come into the cockpit of a dog, right, you would see like a giant altar for ball licking. Because let's be honest, if we could all lick our balls, most of us would be in a lot of trouble right now. But then in the main cockpit, you would have the monitors up. And on the monitors, you would see that they actually have turned the color down so that they can broadcast the smell on top. It's much like a heat signature, right? You've seen those heat signature cameras that show you the world, but in color, but that color is heat. It's not wrong for the dog to see the world that way. In fact, it's actually more accurate. That dog can smell drugs inside of a suitcase. That dog can find a lost person who's run out into the woods. That dog has a different aperture on. And you can't make fun of him for that. He's got Skittles. He's got massive Skittles seeing the world that way. And he's our best friend. He's been showing you the whole time. Hey man, it's all about perception. And it's not just about that. It's more about the willingness. It's more about finally dropping the bullshit about how everything has to be decided on and it has to have a quickening and everything has to be one. It has been exactly 1 hour. Some of you have asked that I limit my show to 1 hour, and I would like for you to stop watching now. I think that's a good break, and this will be a good compromise that we can have, okay? So if you only want an hour show, hit stop. And I'm not going to say anything super, super important. I'm just kidding. I have no idea what I'm going to say. That's why I can't really control how long the show is. I have no idea what I'm going to say. I just got through explaining that there's a ball licking altar inside the cockpit of the dog. That's not something I came up with yesterday. Going, I should tell everybody about the ball licking. This is not how this works. So, let's take all that we just talked about and bring it back to aliens. Jordan Sather insists that there's a giant blue space chicken. And for me to be totally fair, I have to imagine that there's an aperture. This is hard. I have to imagine that there's an aperture somewhere on this chart that has blue space chicken. And that shows you that my compassion is not at 100%. I cannot see the blue space chicken. But if I'm remembering that the commandments do not actually say you can't lie, it suddenly starts to ring a bell for me. Because if I understand that it's quite natural for someone like Jordan Sather to lie, I can now fit that aperture in. I can actually, check this out, I could put on an aperture called people lie. Just like there's a filter where you're going to automatically believe the news, you can take off that filter and put on the filter that says people fucking lie all the time. In fact, it's safer to assume that someone is lying. And when I say lie, let me rephrase that. It's safer to assume that someone has a fucked up aperture on. We are born with Vaseline smeared all over our lens, and it's caked on more and more and more. This is hard work to pull this stuff off. It's difficult to understand how all this works because the lies pain us. We feel betrayed by them. And that's a logical thing to feel. But if you can let go of the pain of that, let me explain it this way. I spoke about a wrestling match yesterday, and I told you that I need you to understand that most of us, or me, this is what I'm guilty of. I'm the dude that bought a ticket to the wrestling match. And in the middle of the match, I'm trying to stop everything so I can get the ref to say, hey man, you can't have chairs in the ring. Like I'm obsessed that we can't have chairs in the ring. We shouldn't have chairs. And if we just didn't have chairs, all of wrestling would be legit. That's where I've been for so long. I've been like, well, politics is broken. We just have to make it where you can't have chairs in the ring because then people won't get hit by chairs so much. And that's kind of what we have to do with lying, is to stop doing what I was doing. Is to understand that the lies aren't a broken part of this. Wrestling isn't broken because it has chairs in it. The universe is not broken because it has liars in it. What you're looking at is people trying to resolve their aperture as best they can. They're trying as hard as they can to make as much of it make sense as possible. All of this are lessons for your compassion. It's lessons for your ability to open your aperture even wider, to stop up, or I think it's stop down that f-stop. Let more information in and see the truth for what it is. If you do this, you'll have more compassion for others, and the compassion will only help you see more. It will not enable them. It won't. Some of you are still stuck that compassion is consent, and it'll take you a while to get past that. That's why I get a lot of, oh, I'm the devil, because I'm saying this stuff. Compassion is not consent. It's okay, though, for you to have that lens that says it is. I'm okay with that. But I need you to know coming into it, you're going to miss a lot of houses, a lot of beach, and a lot of cars and stop signs that weren't there before, because you're convinced that compassion and consent are the same thing. The same way that I would have missed Ken's beautiful model of the dome, a magnetic dome, had I not have compassion for the aperture of his lens too. This is a beautiful, beautiful lesson. And this is what I meant by we're on the precipice of discovering a new color. I think I dropped that point, I'm sorry. As we learn to see red, we learn to see more colors in the spectrum. It is believed in color theory that violet and teal, or purple, or cyan, that these are colors that we only recently had the consciousness to even perceive, that we could not detect a difference between those colors before. And I think it really, really hits back on this aperture thing. What's happening is that our aperture is slowly opening, whether we like it or not, which is great. I want it to open. But I'm saying a lot of us have been fighting it. And as that aperture opens to our colors, it's giving us hints. It's pushing us to say, would you consider opening your aperture in other ways, James? Besides just color, now that you can determine the difference between violet and purple, can you determine the difference between globe Earth and flat Earth? Can you see the difference between these systems and how both of them can be true based on the lensing that you've chosen for your camera right now? And I'm telling you, if you try these on, it's going to feel great. It's going to feel amazing. Because you realize, this is a tough one, guys, but you realize lying is not a commandment. It's not a sin. It's a coping mechanism. Lying is a coping mechanism. If we didn't have lies, we wouldn't be able to fix the fissures, the cracks in our own cosmology, our own lens, our own kit. Our own lens kit would not have the ability to resolve everything that not only we see, but everything we're told we see. And it's because of that we had to have a scaffolding of truth and lies to hold it together long enough where you can build the dome. Or the arch, I should say. The keystone doesn't go in unless you have a scaffolding around it. Once the keystone's in, you pull the scaffolding out and the arch is there. Do you follow what I'm saying? The keystone is your aperture. It's compassionate aperture. It's applying compassion to your aperture. It's no different than noticing the entire time on your lens was this other dial that you just never played with before. It's called compassion. And you're like, holy shit, if I turn this compassion up, if I turn the fear stop down and I turn the compassion up, I'm seeing a whole new world. I'm seeing so much more information than I could see before, and it doesn't scare me because I'm not convinced everyone's evil or everyone's out to get me or everyone's out to change me or everyone's out to fuck me. Yes, the world is hard. Yes, the world wants to stick you with vaccines as long as you believe in them. Yes, it wants to keep testing your consent. It is shrink wrapping. It's placing your consent in a pressure pot, and it's increasing the pressure. It's turning it up because it's alchemizing you. It wants those faulty bubbles out, and it can do that under pressure. It puts you under pressure so that you can be a pure essential lens for the world. You're ready to go. It's like there's a factory and all of us are being made. And we have a high standard of quality for our aperture. And the only way you can get that is to have all this scaffolding in, to have all this stuff in. It's a necessary part of it. And that's why we label things as schizophrenic, because we're lying to ourselves. We're saying that's schizophrenic. Because my aperture cannot deal with a bunch of black shadow creatures, either with green or red eyes, depending on how well you can see them floating around. Or my aperture cannot deal with spirits, or ghosts, or aliens, or however else it is that our lens kit shows the world as it comes in. In Egypt, you didn't die, you wested. Your sun set, but your sun was still alive. It's set. It's such fascinating. It's got the word set in it. It's set. It's called westing. So your spirit is still alive, but it's not visible. It doesn't cast a shadow. It doesn't have a sun to cast its shadow. That westing is our ancestors. They're all around us. And we've abandoned them because our aperture doesn't have the compassion to see them. In fact, to make sure we don't have the aperture, we literally demonize them to push them away. Because all your dopamine, right? Your retinas require dopamine to perceive. Therefore, your eyes are going to see what's comfortable to see. If you've demonized something, you're making it as uncomfortable as possible to see, which means what? You're not going to see it. It's brilliant. It's brilliant because it shows you how your mind unpeels the world around itself like a banana and decides what it is you want to eat and what it is you're not ready to eat. No, you're full. You don't want to go that deep. You don't need that. Or I'm ready for this now. I would like to see what's underneath this pineapple. There could be something really sweet inside. I don't know. But I've encased it with all these spiny bits that I've decided it's not worth looking at. Isn't that the Great Awakening? Like, wouldn't you say that would be the definition of the Great Awakening? Is the great aperture opening? Doesn't it all just kind of fit? I know so many of you are still like, but what about evil? But what about evil? And I'm like, yes, you need evil. You need lies, you need evil. You need to resolve everything around you. But ladies and gentlemen, there are merry pranksters out there that have set up Building 7 for you to see. They set that up for you to see. They endangered all of their control over you to show you that. They staged certain school events, certain school shootings. They staged those, knowing quite well that you would see that. If these were evil people, why didn't they not kill all the Challenger astronauts? Why would they not just kill them? Are we saying they're elite evil psychopaths, but they're just kind of pansies? Are you going to say, well, they're one of our own, so they wouldn't kill them? I don't think so. I don't think that fits. I think you're looking at some serious merry pranksters out there that understand hermetically something about the eyes, something about your aperture, and more importantly, something about blooming consciousness. And as I've said before, I'm going to say it again. The wrestlers are not putting on this show for you. I know it seems that way because they climb up on the turnbuckle and they soak in all the applause. I know it feels that way. But they're not putting on the show for you. They're putting on the show for someone else. The person that puts food on their table, the person that gives them life, that's who this show's for. And these elite Illuminati or whatever you want to call them, these merry pranksters, good and bad, some of them have been caught red-handed, exposing themselves so you would see it. And they're not doing it for you. They're doing it for God. It's weird, but they're doing it for God. They're doing the great work. They're coming into a field of dandelions and they figured out a tone. They figured out a song that they can play across the field. And it makes more dandelions open. And they get off on that. It's their passion. It's their art. What they enjoy doing is causing these dandelions to open. They get prana for that somehow. And it has nothing to do with you. It really has nothing to do with you. It's a different kind of game altogether. And why? Because we don't have the same aperture they do. They've got better equipment. The reason why they have better equipment is because they've known about this longer. They've had a longer time to adjust. They don't have the vasoconstriction, the polyvagal nerve, we talked about this, that's squeezing all your organs. They don't have that that clenching because they don't buy into the quickening. They don't buy into the same things we buy in, so they're able to see more. James has gone insane. Maybe. But I would say that's part of your aperture, Max. Like, you would need to see me as insane to resolve your aperture. And that's fine. Remember, when the Satanic Temple was a fake building and there were no pedophiles, no one was having their face ripped off, no one was cannibalizing anyone in a secret underground elevator that was hidden underneath a dome, it became important to call me a psychopath for pointing that out. It became necessary for people in the Q movement to call me a liar for that. It was a necessary function of their scaffolding to adjust to the world around them. They had to cut that out of the frame because they weren't willing to accept it. It was just too difficult. It's too expensive, not difficult. It was too expensive. All of us are learning the prana economy. We're learning the economy of what we can ingest, what we can take in, what we're willing to accept. And what we lack right now is compassion for others. Maybe I'm preaching more to me, but I've lacked compassion for others more so a week ago than now. And I'm just still learning this every day. And I'm proud of myself that I was able to watch Ken this morning and go, dude's talking about the moon, still has a perfect explanation. I'm thanking my aperture change for that. I'm thanking the compassion of my aperture that opened as being the result of that. And it fits. And I'm under the impression that if I keep doing this, I might start seeing things that I don't even want to see. And then I will either use lies or fear or demonization, right? I will do whatever I can to push that into the uncomfortable realm to where my dopamine simply will not register those rods and cones. And be like, yeah, we got a black shadow at 3 o'clock here, James. You ready for this on your feed? And I'm just like, dude, no. I do not want to imagine my house having black shadow spirits wandering around while I'm cooking. I can't do that. I'm going to say that's not true. And then your system has to go back and go, okay, what kind of lens, what lens do we need to get this shite just right for James? Because he's got to see something. And it picks out a lens, and then a good friend I respect comes over and says, oh, I saw a demon last night. I saw a shadow. And then I'm just like, oh, fuck. Oh, man, I had my lens just right. I had my kit just right. And now someone I respect is telling me data that I don't want to hear. What can I do? And that's when people say, well, James is a secret shill. He's a pedophile shill. And he made up, somehow he doctored the drone video and made it look like a faux painting so that he could hide the secret pedophilia that he personally is doing at Epstein Island. That kind of stuff. My compassion can now see that they're not trying to hurt me. They're not trying to discredit me. It has nothing to do with me. They're fumbling with their kit going, oh shit, I need a polarizer. I need to fix that lens. I got to put this on. That's about the best I can do, but you're a fucking liar now. You're okay with that, right? You're a fucking liar? Good, because I can see perfectly now. This shot makes total sense as long as you're a fucking liar. And that's what the world is. And that's why there's not a commandment saying you can't lie. Because you have to lie. If not, imagine someone, just like you see someone stunned that just cannot fathom what's just been told to them. It would be that all the time. Just like you can hypnotize a chicken, right? I think you turn it upside down, you kind of give it around. It would be a bunch of humans that would just be like stunned because they couldn't lie. They couldn't use some kind of tool to get them out of what it is they're seeing and move on. It's no different than trying to drive a supersonic turbo through the mall. These cars are meant to be going fast before they throttle, before the technology kicks in. And if you're asking them to go through a school zone and go over speed bumps, they can't even clear the speed bump. They're just too open. The turbo's too open. Their ground is too low. The fishtail's pushing them down too much, and they cannot navigate something as simple as a speed bump. It's all about aperture. It's all about compassion and opening this thing. And that's why, man, I be freaky when I say this. Maybe that's why George Bush Sr. said 1,000 points of light. The city on a hill, 1,000 points of light. And that's hard because I love hating that guy. I fucking love it. It's a standard part of my kit, is how much I hate the Bushes. It's just built into my kit. But when I look at it through this method, I see something different. And I see it reflected in all the world around me too. What I mean by that is that people that are successful, there are good people that are successful out there. I don't know a lot of, I know a lot of vapid, shallow people that are maybe successful. I know people that have a narcissism would be an aperture, right? It's like that big, right? It's like I can't allow any pain or critique in, so my aperture is only going to be this big. But this is what I touched on yesterday. No one out there that I know that I've ever met is actively choosing evil every moment. They're doing the best they can to be good. Why? Because their adrenals feel better when they're good. And I'm using this to build a new kit. And this new kit, I can almost focus in on the Bushes. It's fucking weird though. It's weird. Just like I can focus more in on 9/11 now and picture that the towers were empty. It's showing me a lot more data that I couldn't see before. I'm seeing parts of the scene that just weren't there a year ago. Reconnection successful. It's actually a good time to end it. This is what I wanted to talk about. And it's a great thing to wait for Rosicrucian Order tomorrow. We're going to talk about that a little bit too. And yeah. Thanks for joining me. Feel free to give me comments about length of the show. I'm definitely willing to listen to whatever that applies for. And yeah, let's go out and have a great day and work on our aperture. How about it? I'm going to hit stop streaming now. Thank you much.